Hi, this is Eric Martin with Board Game Geek. I'm here today looking at Reiner Knizia's Lost Cities Rivals, published by Cosmos. This is a 2 to 4 player game that plays in about 30 minutes for players ages 10 and up. And from the Lost Cities name, you know that this game is related to Reiner Knizia's 1999 2-player only release, Lost Cities, a card game that is still around, still well known, still sells continuously. It's kind of amazing the longevity that Knizia's creations have. I will just mention. He's been having everything reissued, Fantasy Flight Games through Z-Man, and the Asmodee Partners has been reissuing Tigris and Euphrates and Samurai and Ra and Taj Mahal, and so many classics coming back. Knizia is also bringing his own games back and then reworking them in new ways. So Through the Desert seems very familiar to the new 2018 release, Blue Lagoon, although it's different. It's the same and different. This is what Knizia does, is he takes his creations and does them in new ways. So Lost Cities Rivals is similar to Lost Cities, which was itself remade into the Keltis, a board game in Germany that won Spiel des Jahres in 2008. After Keltis, we had Keltis the dice game and the card game and a travel game and an expansion and a standalone board game, The Oracle, while in the US, that game was released as Lost Cities the board game. And now Cosmos is redoing things under the Lost Cities brand in Germany, with now Lost Cities the board game appearing there, along with a small travel game that is new, along with Lost Cities Rivals that is also new, that takes the same concept as Lost Cities, which is mostly straightforward, putting cards down in order to represent you traveling in an expedition. It's that concept, but, of course, done differently. So how does this work? Here are the components in Lost Cities Rivals. You have 36 coins that are distributed evenly among the number of players. So with a 4-player game, you'll start with 9 coins. You have 10 investment or wager cards, 2 of each of the 5 colors, and you get 2 different colored cards to start the game with. And you'll have a deck of cards, and this deck contains what will be a familiar arrangement of cards to people who have played Lost Cities before, with a slight twist, and that you have 3 investment cards for each color. You have cards numbered 2 to 5 with 2 copies of each in the 5 colors, and then you have cards 6 to 10. Now, each of the cards 6 to 10 have 2 footprints on them, and that counts as 2 points. All 2 to 5 have 1 footprint, that's 1 point each. The investment cards are worth nothing on their own. You need to actually go traveling somewhere to get them. Now, when you look at the cards that you put in front of you, you're going to score points at the end of the game. This is worth 1 point. This is 2 points, 3 points, 5 points, 7 points. Well, that's very straightforward. If you have 1 investment card in a color, you have now doubled that. So instead of 7, you get 14. If you do this, you triple it, you get 21. If you have a third one, you get 28. You get a fourth one, because there's 3 in a deck, and you might start with a blue. You quintuple your score. So 35 points here. In addition, if you get 4 or more number cards in an expedition, you get a bonus of 8 points, regardless of whether you have investments or not. So this is not only 7 points, it's 15 points. And you do this, you double it to 14 plus 8 is 22. Do this again, is 29, and so on. This is what you are trying to do, is achieve long scoring expeditions with lots of investment. Once you lay a number card down on an expedition, you cannot go back and have an investment afterward. Once you place a 3, you cannot go back and place a 2. You are taking snapshots of what you have seen so far, and then you must continue onward. So the challenge is getting all the cards in the right order and hopefully piling them up and having a high scoring expedition. But how do you get these cards? Knizia has created a number of brilliant auction games over his 30-year design career, with Modern Art being the most famous because that game is all auctions and nothing but. You have Ra, you have Trump Fabrique, you've got others as well with sort of hidden auction games, sort of Taj Mahal style, where you are laying down cards and those are your bets. But they are still a bet because you keep increasing and other people drop out if they can't go higher than you. So it still functions that way. Lost Cities Rivals is an auction game as well, boiled down to very straightforward actions. To set up at the start of Lost Cities auctions, you give each player the 2 investment cards. You divide the deck into 4 piles of roughly even height. You don't have to worry about it too much. And then a turn is very simple. You either call an auction for the cards in the pool, which at the beginning of the game is nothing. The pool will never be empty after this. Or you flip a card and add it to the pool. The next player can now call an auction for this 10, which would end this expedition if anyone claims it, or flip a card, add it to the pool. And this continues. Call an auction, flip a card. That's all you have for the options. Once you call an auction, you must place a bid of 1 or more. Each player goes around in order. They either pass or they place a higher bid. Once someone passes, they're out for the round. Whoever wins takes their money, their bid that they win with, and they put it in a central pot. They can then claim any number of cards from the center, from 0 to all, and add them to their expeditions, following the normal building rules for expeditions. And then optionally, you can take 1 card from the center pool, and you throw it out of the game. To end your turn as the auction winner, you flip a new card to sort of sweeten the pot again, and then the player to your left goes. Regardless of whether you were the next player or they were the next player or who was, if you win the auction, the player to your left goes next. Your money just sits here over on the side. I now have less money to work with for the future auctions, and I definitely would want that too on top of my investment. But the next player chooses. Do they want to bid or do they want to flip? And again, the process continues. This gets back to me. I'm definitely calling an auction. This process of flipping or calling an auction continues until you flip the final card in that quarter of a deck. And when that happens, you take all the money that's been put aside, that's been used for successful auctions so far, and you redistribute that money among all the players. So you have to manage your cash through that first quarter of the deck with no idea of what's coming in that deck itself, not to mention the rest of the 3 quarters of the cards, to see if you can get things that you want and not run out of money, so that all you can do on a turn is flip a card, leaving decisions up to everyone else. But sometimes the cards are so good you just can't help yourself. However, this final card is flipped, you're going to add it to the pool, redistribute the money, start the next quarter. When you flip over the final card of that deck, you redistribute money again. You flip over this one, you redistribute money again. When you flip over the card at the end of the final quarter deck, no more redistribution. You just end the game, counting the expeditions as I explained earlier, in addition to scoring 1 point for each gold coin you have remaining. And there's an overview of Lost Cities Rivals, which I've played 8 times now on a review copy from Thames and Cosmos. Twice with 3 players, once with 2, the other times with 4. Now the funny thing is, I had played Lost Cities Rivals a couple of times before the Gen Con convention. Both times with 3 players, and both times with people who did not really like auction games. So it did not go over great. They did not have an enjoyable time, or mostly playing because I asked them to play. Okay, fine. I said I'm going to bring this game to Gen Con, focus on playing that more than anything else so that I can talk about it, as I am right now. And I played once with 2 players. I taught the game 5 other times to people, all in 4-player games. No one repeated over those 4 games. So that's a little weird, but it was very helpful to me getting lots of experience with this game. So this is sort of the hard part with an auction game, in that the first time you play an auction game, you are going to play foolishly. You're going to make terrible bids. You're not going to manage your money well. And generally you will perform poorly compared to how you will do in future games once you actually get experience with the flow of the game, when you see how things happen. So, in those 6 games that I played at Gen Con, I won 5 of them. Just because I think I have experience with the game, I had a better idea of what I was trying to do. Really concentrate on getting at least 4 numbers in a color. Because when you do that, it's not just adding 1 more card, which is getting you 1 point, or if it's doubled, 2 points, or if it's got 2 footprints, 4 points, or 6 points. No, that's suddenly 14 points for adding that 4th card to an expedition. It's crucially important to get that. And I think I was focused on that more than everyone else because they were just kind of seeing how things worked out. Okay, that definitely happens with an auction game, where my experience with the game let me win. Okay. But more to the point of that is actually seeing people who were excited about auction games playing it and really enjoying themselves. The two-player game is super weird just because it's a two-player auction game. And for the most part, it's just about when are you going to pull the trigger to get things? How much do you want to let the pot build before you actually decide to call an auction and maybe take some of that temptation off the table for the other player, who, of course, if they win an auction, they get to burn one of those cards. So at a certain point, you're just trying to remove things that are going to be high scoring for the other player. At least that's what it felt like, but I've only played one, so I'm not really sure. With 4 players, the game feels much more, well, let me just say Lost Cities Rivals is taking Lost Cities with the auction tempo of Ra, pull a tile or call an auction in Ra, with money management from Trump Fabrique. So here we go. 3 Knizia titles merged together. Because, of course, you only have a limited amount of money until money flows back to you once a quarter of the deck is through. That's not quite the same as Trump Fabrique, because, of course, you get money based on what other people bid on every single auction that sort of flows back to you slowly over time. Here, your money trickles out and you get a big infusion 3 times during the game. It's a different feel, but it's kind of similar. And it's funny, of course, to think that Knizia is maligned sometimes for just cannibalizing his own designs. But the guy's been designing games for 30 years, and it's kind of funny to think that you would complain about someone pulling parts or assembling parts, or however you want to think of it, from 3 incredibly good games. Ra, Trump Fabrique, and Lost Cities are all wonderful games. Fantastic designs. And it seems weird to say, he's just reusing things from his past. Okay. Is the final product good? Is the final design something that you would want to play? And if it is, then super, great, keep doing that. Do that thing that you want. Some people will say, he's cannibalizing his past. I don't want to look at it anymore. Other people will say, yeah, he's cannibalizing his past and making something awesome. So it's the exact same feel, but different take on that, whether that's good or bad. Lost Cities Rivals, for me, is a fantastic small design that takes the feel of Lost Cities, yet completely changes it by having this auction element, because a lot of it is taking risk on what is going to come up at which times in the deck. Something you just pull the trigger, you feel you have to call an auction. You can't let the pot get any bigger. And this is where the game has these raw elements where you flip over certain tiles and you know that this person's out. They do not want that at all because it has a disaster or something for their what they're collecting. It's not quite the same with Lost Cities, but if this flips over blue 4 and 2 people are past that in their blue expedition and 2 of us are not, we're interested in that. We're competing against each other. What else is going to be in the pot that's going to lure people into the game? Because I don't want these guys getting in here where they're going to throw away that 4 because I already have 2 investments in blue, and I want to get up to that point where I can flip over to get 4 cards and have a certain number of things and really pay off on my investments. So do I want to keep flipping and possibly draw them into the option, or do I want to call an auction and just compete directly? And that question comes up over and over again. And this is, again, has that raw feel to the auction where it's either flip or call. Flip or call. What do you want to do? Is that feel with the tension of the money management over the course of the game and how you're going to keep people out of bids or pull them into bids. You're trying to keep track. All the money's public. You can see what people have, so you know what you want to bid and see where you're going to push them. Where's the pain point where they don't really want to pull the trigger, even though they know you're getting something awesome? They don't want to push you. They don't want to bid higher to try to force you to bid higher because you might just back off because there's still half the deck left to go. It's all sorts of awesome, cool things in this little design. It just feels great as you're playing, and you get these moments throughout the game where you get this tension of trying to, just squeeze people in different ways. Maybe it sounds cruel to say it that way, but that's how the game feels, where you're trying to collect all the stuff for yourself and then burn things that other people want. at the right times. Maybe you stay out of a color. Maybe you don't even get into a color until the final quarter of the deck. Because at a certain point in the game, if you flip over a card that no one can use anymore, you just throw it out. No one gets it. You don't put up a replacement card. It's just thrown aside. But if no one is in green, and now we're flipping green investments, they just sit there. And if nothing really comes up that other people want to call an auction from, maybe I can scoop up a few green cards at once, relatively cheap, because no one else wants to go bid against me. And again, it's the variety of the game. All of the games have felt extremely different just in terms of which cards and which colors and which numbers have come out at which times and what people are competing for and where you're going to go. Some people just grab stuff early and they figure, well, there's a 7, 8, 9 of a color. I'm just going to grab it right now for like 2 coins. It's cheap. It's 6 points. I know I'm mostly done with that color, but it's a small investment for what I hope to be a good return. Maybe it pays off for them. Maybe not. So it's hard to tell initially, but that pile starts getting bigger, and at some point you just you want to go for it. The one real drawback to Lost Cities Rivals, and it's kind of surprising considering that the original game is 20 years old, you had this great game to draw on for inspiration in terms of the graphic design, because the cards are not very clear in terms of the expedition that they're on. All the cards, in a nod to modern technology, have symbols on them. So you're going to look at the card and it's got a symbol to show which expedition it is, but the colors are not necessarily clear. A lot of the ones for the green expedition, where it's got these 3 monolith type things, do not look green at all. So it's hard when you flip it over, people think, oh, it's the white expedition, or it's the blue one. No, it's the green one, but it's not green. It doesn't scream green the way that the cards in Lost Cities do. Or the yellow ones sometimes look a little whitish. It's not very clear. And it's just, why? You have this 20-year-old design. You think you'd just test this to make sure that you could visually read the cards and there'd be no mistake for what the cards look like and for what expedition they represent. And I've had that repeatedly with multiple people where I have to point out, flip over the card, and I'll be like, that's this expedition. That's green, even though it doesn't say green. Maybe it's my fault for calling it green when I should call it the 3 stone expedition. But it's initially super green. You look at it and you say, that thing's green, wherever I had it on the table. Green. But then the cards just sort of lose the greenness along the way. So, disappointing for that, but nothing a marker can't fix. We'll just take it right out, then play again. Lost Cities Rivals.